Well, what are the realities of renewing our existing car fleet or extending its lifespan? So I'm going to ask the question to you guys. It's great to have you on the set here. So my first question, conversion bonuses. We've seen banning older vehicles from circulating and promoting electric cars. Everything seems to suggest that today public authorities have made their choice. What is your opinion? What do you think? Anyway, this question goes for all three of you. Who wants to start?
I can start. Yeah, first of all, I think before thinking about renewing the existing cars, we should try to shift towards more active transportation modes. Instead of using cars, we should shift towards public transportation, foot, bicycles, for example. We are investing today billions in supporting the shift towards electric vehicles. We are investing 50 million euros in France per year to support cycling. So why not putting more effort on supporting cycling rather than putting everything on shifting towards electric cars? So the first thing is sobriety. Instead of using individual cars, use public transportation and shift towards more active transportation modes. But we still have a problem since we have existing cars on the roads that are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases emissions.
Absolutely.
And we must do something with them. Today, private cars are accounting for 16% of global GHG emissions in France. So how can we shift? How can we shift towards more efficient and less emitting cars? We have a set of tools for this. For example, low emission zones should be better implemented in France, especially in cities. And we also must continue to support the shift towards electric cars, especially for the poorer households, who today, these households today cannot afford to pay for an electric car.
Yeah, so that's interesting viewpoint. So I will turn now to our manufacturers. So probably, Ludovic, you work for BMW and doesn't need any introduction. This brand, everybody knows it. So you've heard Arnaud on the topic. What's your viewpoint?
I would like to get back to your questions. There are measures implemented today, but there are three kinds of issues we shall look at. First one is about local pollution, and it's about emitting pollutants. And the measures you described are about reducing local pollution, just like low emission zones as well. There are another set of measures which were not mentioned. It's about global warming. So for this topic, it's mainly about CO2, reducing CO2 emissions. And here as well, there are a lot of discussions and also decisions. If you think about WLTP protocol, RDE, but also Fit for 55, the rollout of electric cars, those are also strong.
Lots of sets of policies that have been set up to go in that direction.
Exactly. And in this, but from my perspective, there's still a lot to do, because this is only focusing about what's happening in the tailpipe. But this is not all about the tailpipe. It's also about what's happening before, how much raw materials we extract from the planet, how much we consume when we produce, and how do we recycle. So this is also something very important we have to take into account. And for that, we are really pushing hard to have this entire life cycle taken into account in the decisions. And last but not least, also, there's bans. Yes, bans is one thing, but also incentivizing people is another thing. And we can also get very good results by incentivizing people.
Which sometimes can be more effective.
And can be more effective. So, for instance, we have a technology called eDrive Zone. It's not about regulation. No one talks about it, but we have implemented a technology that allows our drivers, when they have a PHEV car, so a plug-in hybrid car, to go through the city without any emission, because the engine immediately and automatically gets off. And another possibility is to propose or to offer points for those drivers to ensure they are really charging the cars. PF cars, we know, unfortunately, are not charged sufficiently. And with our incentivizing program, we could have 75% of our drivers charging the cars. It makes a big difference.
Fantastic. We'll dig deeper later on. Jean-Philippe, your viewpoint on this question.
Well, your question is around the fact that authorities have made a decision, have made choices already regarding...
Which is great.
The way, yeah, which is great, to my opinion, as well, which is necessary. I mean, imagine that they wouldn't have done that, just express an ambition, which is decarbonizing the mobility without a framework, a regulatory framework, a fiscal framework, an incentivization framework. I agree with my colleagues. I mean, we need multiple solutions, reducing kilometers, shifting modes towards softer modes, incentivizing people to change their purchase behavior towards new technologies, but also accompanying them in changing their usage mode, etc. So there are many things to do, and it's very good that the authorities have a vision, and that this vision is reflected into a regulation. We can discuss the pace, we can discuss even the technological choices, but it's good that the authority has an ambition, because we have to start from the beginning. What are we trying to do? I mean, we are trying to solve an issue which is gigantic, which is climate change, and we know that we have to, at least in this sector, the mobility sector, to find solutions to get towards neutrality.
Absolutely.
And we are lucky, we are fortunate, we have solutions, which is not the case for all consumer sectors, I would say. And here we have, on one hand, the reduction of kilometers, and that's absolutely necessary, but that will not be sufficient. We also have to organize some kind of technological shift, and this is difficult. Also, we have this technology, which is electrification. We also have hydrogen. This technology is recognized as providing huge benefit in terms of environment. We are fortunate because it's also a competitive technology. Already today, for most of the usage, we can find solutions that are competitive compared to traditional energy. But we know that this transformation carries some problems, industrial stresses, social issues, political crisis. We know about the Gilets jaunes, and we know where it's coming from. So this is related to transition, and this transition will be difficult. Therefore, it's important that the authorities organize this transition, force it, but in a clever way. What does it mean? It means that, first of all, it has to be holistic. As we mentioned, you see, many solutions are available. It has to be also comprehensive in a way that we can't have the car manufacturers providing the right vehicles, but not the infrastructure available.
Yeah, but you have to work together for that.
Together. But this sharing of effort and this pace, I mean, the consistency of the pace has to be organized by the authorities. And on top of that, they have to be constant and provide long-term visibility. And that's the role of these regulations you are mentioning. You can discuss them, but they have to be there, and they have to provide to OEMs, economical players, consumers, territories that have to invest in infrastructure, the right path, and the orientation. That's absolutely necessary. And once the frame is there, then the OEMs, the car manufacturers, they can compete. It's a new frame for competition. That's it. It's just like Formula One, that you know very well. You have constraint, and within this constraint, you can compete. And now we see that most of OEMs have understood that that will be the new frame, and they want to get to be the leaders into that.
Right. So you wanted to add something?
Oh, yes. Sorry. No, but we're talking also about carbon neutrality. Techno-neutrality or not, and that's a legitimate question. Should a regulation be neutral, or shouldn't it be not neutral? This is a theoretical question to me. We need this technological orientation because we cannot afford to have many types of infrastructures, a diversity of investment in terms of powertrain and energy, because that won't be the most efficient way to change the industry. industry needs a return for investment. So it needs to be clear about what's going to be the solution. And it's also a way to organize some leadership at European level. So, to my opinion, to summarize, the legislator or the policymakers, they have to regulate and legislate, but they have to organize that on a holistic way. They have to accompany the change and prevent the social impact of it, but it is a good thing both for the industry and the environment.
Fantastic. That's a very clear answer. I will get back to what Arnaud said at the beginning. When we were speaking about cars that are already on the road, we saw it. So the lifespan is approximately like 12 years. So what can we do? Are there still ways to decarbonize, or what do we do with those cars? Is it too late? What can we do? Who wants to take it?
Well, I just want to make a correction. First, the lifespan of average lifespan of a vehicle is more like 18 years.
Okay, more than 12 years then.
The age of the stock is 12 years approximately. But it's, I mean, the question is.
The question. I mean, you have cars on the road that are for 18 years, but that's very old.
Yes, but the average is 12 indeed.
The average is 12 indeed in France, right? Okay. So what can we do about those cars? What are the things that we can put in place? Is it too late for those cars? Oh, things you were talking about that, Arnaud.
No, we can retrofit some of these cars. We can convert them to electric vehicles, but the potential for this is quite limited. It is costly. If you take a small city car, for example, the price to retrofit it to an electric vehicle is almost the same price as buying a new car. So we clearly see that the potential for this is clearly limited. So the other way to do it is to invest in recycling. We clearly have to invest in...
There are new business models there.
Of course, we have to invest in recycling, and we have to shift from these old cars that are polluting a lot, that are causing a lot of problems in terms of climate, but also in terms of health. We didn't talk about health. Now, diesel cars in France are a major source of nitrogen oxide, which is causing a lot of problems for life expectancy for people living in cities.
Right.
So clearly we have to put these cars, I would say, in the bin, recycle them, and shift towards electric cars, but with less kilometers, less cars on the road, and shifting towards more active transportation.
That's also lots of energy consumption, so we have to think about how to make it the best way possible. If we look at, for example, what's the best way to look at it? Producing a new car or putting maintenance in an old one? I don't know. That's a real question. So at the end of the day, for the planet, if we have to, I'm not the expert, I don't have the data. What do you think?
Well, it depends. It depends of the consumer. It depends of the situation of each of us. And you know, so far we had to incentivize the beginning of a transition. So there were many incentives, bonuses, etc. And really, they were towards the most agile people, the most wealthy people, so that they could initiate this transformation. But now we are going to move most of the population towards new technologies that are more expensive upfront from a cost of purchase standpoint. They are competitive after that, but anyway, this means that we have to organize the shift with some kind of social differentiation. Incentivization phase was directed towards some population. Now we have to identify the fragile population, the most impacted population from a professional standpoint, and offer them a system that will accompany their transition very specifically. So we have to reconsider the political instrumentation with this new approach. Now, to be more specific about your question, it makes sense for someone that drives very slow, very little, to keep its car and maintain it as long as possible, which is absolutely not the case for someone who drives
every day and needs it a lot.
You have old cars which are very old with lots of emissions. Some of them are big and use less for the purpose of the user. So we have to consider more differentiation to accompany really the change, and the answer won't be the same for everyone, depending mainly on social demographical aspects.
Ludovic, do you agree?
Yes, that's a very, very good point from our perspective, especially, yes, getting back to these 12-year-old fleets.
Here, mostly in France or in Europe, because in Africa it's a different story.
Of course, but in the end, we have this fleet, and actually those cars have benefited from all Euro regulations. It means that within 30 years, we could decrease by around 90% or 95% depending on pollutants, and around 50% for CO2 emissions. So that's a lot, and there's more to come. We committed to 40% decrease in CO2 for the whole life cycle at BMW Group, and have it confirmed measured by the SBTi. So it's a certification, and this is something which is mandatory for the future. Look at the whole life cycle. We'll get back to it later. And getting back to the fleet, one risk with higher and higher regulations, although it's better for the new cars, of course, is to have people not being able to purchase a new car because the price are getting higher. And then
that's a good question.
And what we fear is what we call Habana effect, where people can try to retain their cars as long as possible, although it's not very efficient or very clean anymore. Instead of being able or having the possibility to purchase a new one with lower emissions or lower impact.
Arnaud, you don't seem to agree.
Yeah, no, but I'd like to bounce back on this, and clearly it's a risk to put the electric cars for the wealthiest, and this shouldn't be the case in the coming years. But a way to make electric vehicles more affordable for people and for households is to reduce their weight. Now to build smaller cars. We clearly shouldn't make the same mistakes as we did on SUVs.
In the past, yeah.
In the past, on thermal cars.
But we're still manufacturing SUVs
and
even today.
We are manufacturing electric SUVs today. It causes many problems. First is a resource problem.
Of course.
They're huge. They need bigger batteries, so we will have a problem on rare metals in the near future. And also they are super costly. So one way to do this, to make this car more affordable, is to ask manufacturers to build smaller cars. That's a way to do it. And now, when we see what when we see what the manufacturers are offering today on the market, it's mainly SUVs.
Right. So probably doesn't make economic sense for the manufacturers to. What do you have to say?
Yes, I would like to to give an answer. I agree on the direction. The direction being reducing impacts on materials. And getting back to your point, you have the same argument regarding the fleets that could be recycled. But actually, if we build cars today, we are able to think about recycling and reusing it. But the former fleets, former cars, they were not, unfortunately, not made for that, and they are very difficult.
You mean the new generation of cars they were building today? There's like what, cradle to cradle?
Yes,
is this something we're thinking about, the whole recycle?
Today we are able at BMW Group to reuse 30% of the materials, and so in a car today you have 30% of reused material, which is amazing, but not sufficient. And the car you are seeing around us, it's a vision of what could be a premium car in around 2040, where 100% of materials can be recycled, and also 100% of materials are already recycled.
And this is what manufacturers are aiming at today, to be able to produce cars that are built out of 100% recycled materials?
From my perspective, this is a top priority. We are aiming towards electromobility, which is a good step for reducing emission during usage. But if we want to have a look at the whole life cycle and the real footprints of the car industry, this is the direction where you can really look at what you extract from the planet. It also solves geopolitical issues, because if you don't need to extract or to buy materials from some countries, it's a good solution. So it's really a virtuous circle, right? Yeah. Circle, yes.
Absolutely. Jean-Philippe, you were smiling. You want to add something there?
Well, two comments on my colleague statements. Arnaud, you're saying that we should ask OEMs to build lower or smaller cars. It exists already in some countries. If you compare, for example, the fleet in Japan compared to China, they are totally different. In Japan, they are small. In China, they are huge, or in the US. And that's a matter of regulation again. It's not just asking for this type of material. It's because they implemented some kind of regulation.
Let's say demand and not ask.
So there are ways, and to answer to Ludovic to some extent about the cost and the price. The problem today is that we have to switch fast, and it doesn't go well with the fact that we have to organize low emission zones, and that some very fragile population will be impacted by that, and they cannot afford electric cars because they are not second-hand cars or twice second-hand, so that they can become very affordable, but they will as well. So it's not a matter of electrification versus non-electrification. It's a matter of pace of transition, and once again supporting the most fragile people in their purchase or non-purchase, because they can share cars, they can lease cars. So there are new business models to invent.
Exactly.
To
vehicle as a service and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned something very, I think our time is up, but very briefly, you mentioned second car vehicles. What about that market? Is that market still relevant?
It's huge market in France. Actually, it's the biggest market. It's 80% of the market is about used cars. So there is a second life for the cars. And people themselves, they are making it longer, the life cycle of the car, and which is good. But at the moment, only cars, or mostly cars above 15 years old, are making the biggest share of the market. And this is an issue, and for sure we shall try to find solutions to make younger cars, not necessarily new, but younger, 5 years, being purchased by people.
Right. Arnaud, very briefly.
The average budget for an household, a French household, to buy a car is 6,000 euros. So you clearly see that they are turning to the second-hand market which
is more relevant to their
very
budget.
Old cars. And my problem now, and to come back to the point I was mentioning, if you put on the market today mostly SUVs that are costing 50,000, 100,000 euros, what will these people buy in 5 or 10 years? If on the second-hand market, they only find cars that are still costing 20,000, 30,000 euros. So this is a real issue for the coming years. What we are putting on the market today is coming on the second-hand market in a few years. And if we don't have small cars, these people will not be able to afford them.
I think the message of Arnaud is quite loud and clear.
Yes, and that's right. And if we don't have electric cars, we don't have electric cars in the used car market neither in the next years. So that's a relevant point to see and try to orientate the support the demand towards the most positive or lower impact cars in the market.
Right. So that's pretty much all the time we have. I think the discussion is very exciting. We could go on for really forever. But just one quick word, maybe Jean-Philippe, just one final word, just to close on this question of decarbonizing the existing fleet. What would you like to say? Well, how do you see the future?
Well, we did not tackle very much the life cycle impact of a car, which is the new frontier. I would say we are going to solve, from a regulatory standpoint, the problem of electrification versus not. lot. That means the problem of tailpipe emission, both CO2 and pollutants. But now, from that moment, we have to address the question of the energy efficiency of the vehicle,
Absolutely.
size of the vehicle, weight of the vehicle, but not only the way it's produced, where it's produced, the energy intensity, the carbon intensity of the energy in the country it's produced. So it's another front that has to be opened by regulators, a new dialogue with all the stakeholders. But we have also now to address the fact that once we've solved the question of fossil fuel use in cars, we have to address the question of material, size, production way, etc. So that's the new frontier.
Right. And Ludovic, your final words?
I would say the most efficient way, from my perspective, is to renew the existing fleet as quickly as possible, or at least the older fleets as quickly as possible, to reduce the footprints, reduce the emissions, improve the health in the cities, because we know that today's cars are much more, much greener and cleaner than older ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Arnaud, final word.
My final word is to green the transportation system in a whole. It's by shifting towards more active transportation modes, and also by playing on with technological tools. So we have to use every tool at our disposal and not only rely on technological shift.
Fantastic. So that would be the closing, guys. We don't have time and we could go on. So time to close the debate. Exciting discussion in so many ways. The full version will be available on Movin'On Connect website. So don't miss the opportunity to learn more. So thank you all for sharing your experiences and views on this pressing challenge.